It was a cold night on the road. You know, the kind of night where the truck's headlights barely cut through the fog and the asphalt feels like it stretches on forever. The kind of night when you're miles away from the nearest town, with nothing but dark sky and endless highway ahead of you. That's when it happens. You hear the first voice on the CB. It's crackling at first, all static, but it's there. Just faint enough to make you question whether you actually heard something, but enough to keep you staring at the radio, waiting. Now, I'm not the kind of guy who believes in ghost stories or anything like that, but this night, well, this night was different, and it's the kind of night I'll never forget. I'm John, and I've been driving trucks for over 20 years. The roads, in my blood. I've seen a lot in my time out here, but there's something about the quiet nights that get to you, you know? It's the isolation that gets in your head, especially when you're barreling down those back roads, the kind of stretches where the world just sort of falls away. I was headed northbound, my rig loaded down with some industrial parts. Nothing fancy, just the usual haul. But that night something felt off from the start. I couldn't put my finger on it. Maybe it was the weather. Maybe it was the fact that I'd been driving solo for the last few hours without any company. But the weird thing, I'd just crossed over into this remote stretch of highway when the radio crackled to life. At first I thought it was a bad connection. Old CB radios, they can be temperamental. Hell, I've had my fair share of static. But this was different. There was a voice, faint but unmistakable. It was a man's voice. Turn around, just those two words. I leaned closer to the CB, my fingers hovering over the dial. I squinted into the darkness of the road ahead. There wasn't a car in sight. Not a single light for miles, just me and the open highway. Hello? I called into the mic. I didn't expect an answer. Maybe someone on the same stretch of road, a fellow trucker just messing around, but nothing. Just silence, broken only by the low hum of the engine. A minute later, the voice came again, clearer this time, but with an eerie edge to it, like it was coming from somewhere far away, maybe even from beyond the static. Turn around, John, it's too late. That's when my stomach dropped. I mean, I've been doing this long enough to know that CB radios can sometimes pick up strange things. Maybe it's someone playing a prank. Maybe there's some old signal bouncing around from God knows where. But the fact that it called me by name, that wasn't something I'd ever experienced before. I didn't respond. Maybe I was hoping it was just some kind of glitch. Or maybe I was hoping if I ignored it, it would go away. But that voice, it stuck with me. For a while, it was quiet. Just the sound of my tires eating up the miles, the engine growling under my hands. I tried to shake off the chill creeping up my spine. Probably just some bored trucker trying to mess with my head. Then, just as I was starting to settle back into the rhythm of the road, the voice came again. The rest stopped, John. It's waiting for you. This time, the voice was different. Slower, almost mournful, like it was trying to warn me about something. And I'll admit it, I looked around as though I might catch a glimpse of the person speaking. But there was nothing. The road was as empty as it had been before. I pulled the truck over onto the shoulder, flipping the CB switch into the receive position again. Who is this? I barked into the mic, trying to sound authoritative, trying to shake the unease. That was creeping in. Nothing. Just static. I stared at the road ahead. A dark shape started to emerge on the horizon, the glow of lights up ahead. A rest stop. I had no real reason to stop. I'd been driving for hours, sure, but I wasn't out of fuel or anything. And yet, the thought of pulling off there, in the middle of nowhere, sent a shiver through me. I couldn't explain it. It wasn't just the voice, there was something else now, too. Something that felt wrong about this whole stretch of road. Maybe it was my mind playing tricks on me, but I started to wonder if I was headed towards something I wasn't supposed to find. But the rest stop was coming up fast, and my gut was telling me that I couldn't just drive past it. I had to stop. So I eased the truck into the lot, parking beneath a flickering streetlight that didn't quite reach the far corners of the lot. It felt like the light was barely holding the darkness back, and I could swear I saw shapes moving around the edges of the lot. I killed the engine and grabbed my CB mic again, half expecting to hear the voice come through the static. But for the first time there was only silence, dead silence, the kind that feels heavy like the world is holding its breath. I sat there for a minute, staring into the darkness beyond the light, wondering if I was being paranoid. I didn't feel like getting out of the truck, but at the same time I felt compelled. Maybe I could use the brake. Just a quick one. Walk around, stretch my legs, get my head straight. Then, as if on cue, the voice came again. You shouldn't. Be here, John, it's too late. My heart skipped a beat. This time the voice wasn't just a warning, it was a command. And that's when I knew something wasn't right. I looked around the lot again, the tension building in my chest. The silence felt deeper now. The air was thick with it. I could feel it in my bones, that sense that I wasn't alone, that someone was watching me. I didn't want to get out of the truck, I didn't want to move. But the next thing I knew, my hand was on the door handle, pulling it open. I shouldn't have opened the door, but once my hand was on that handle, it was like I couldn't stop myself. Like something was pulling me out, urging me to step out into the cold, dark night. A faint hum echoed in the back of my mind, as if the world itself was vibrating in tune with the eerie, ghostly voice that had warned me. You'd think I'd be smart enough to ignore it, right? To just drive off, forget the whole thing, but no, I'm a trucker. And we all know truckers, we're stubborn. We don't listen to the little voice telling us to turn around. We've got places to go, loads to deliver, and no time for mystery. That's what I told myself. But here I was, the engine turned off, the truck silent around me, my eyes locked on that rest stop. There was no one else around, not a single car, not even a sign of life, just the flickering streetlights casting long, eerie shadows across the cracked pavement. The lot stretched out before me like a scene from some post-apocalyptic movie. The cold air made me shiver as I stepped out of the cab, and for a split second I actually considered staying inside. But no, this wasn't going to stop me. I was just a little rattled, that's all. I closed the door behind me, my boots crunching against the gravel as I walked toward the dimly lit building ahead. The rest stop was small, rundown, the kind of place that looked like it hadn't seen any business in years. The walls were stained with age, and the lights above buzzed like they were on their last legs. The voice on the CB kept echoing in my mind, but I shoved it aside. I wasn't a kid anymore. No matter how creepy this place seemed, I was just here, there to stretch my legs. I wasn't going to let it get to me, but as I walked across the lot, something shifted. Something unsettling. I don't know if it was the silence or the way the shadows seemed to grow longer with each step, but it felt like the air had changed, thickened, as though the night was closing in around me. My breath puffed out in the cold air, and for a moment I thought I saw a shadow move by the edge of the building. I froze, my heart slamming against my ribs. Was it just a trick of the light? I took a deep breath, steadying myself, but the hairs on the back of my neck were standing up now. No, I wasn't going crazy. I saw it. A shadow. It shifted along the corner of the building, just out of reach of the light. I cursed under my breath, and quickened my pace. There was no way I was going to get freaked out by a shadow. Shadows were just shadows, right? Nothing more. But as I reached the door to the building, I paused. Something felt wrong. Something was off. I could hear it now, soft but clear, almost like a whisper. John, it was coming from behind me, the voice. Again. I whipped around, my heart in my throat. No one. No one in sight. The lot was empty, save for the faded yellow benches that sat under the dying lights. I squinted, trying to pierce the darkness, but there was nothing. The shadow I thought I'd seen. It was gone. I felt stupid. I was being paranoid, letting this whole damn thing get to me. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me, waiting. The door to the rest stop was unlocked, swinging open with a creak as I pushed it inside. The air inside smelled stale, like old coffee and mildew. There was a cracked vending machine in the corner, the soft glow of its lights casting a sickly hue across the room. The floor was littered with scraps of paper and what looked like old magazines abandoned long ago. A broken payphone hung crookedly on the wall, its receiver dangling like it was about to fall off any second. I stepped further into the space, the sound of my boots on the floor echoing too loudly in the silence. The hairs on my arms stood on end as I walked past the counter, and then it hit me. There was a faint smell, not of coffee, not of mildew, but something metallic. Copper. It was the kind of smell that made your stomach turn. I didn't know what it was, but I knew it was wrong. Something was very wrong. Then I heard it, a faint sound, a soft shuffle. I froze. It was coming from the back of the building, just past the restrooms. I couldn't help it. I had to check. I was drawn to it, as though my feet weren't my own anymore. Crept toward the hallway leading to the restrooms, every step slow and deliberate. The air felt colder the farther I went, the smell of copper thickening, almost like it was in the very walls. I reached the entrance to the hallway, and then I saw it, a figure, a person, or what used to be a person. It was standing at the far end of the hallway facing the wall, its body stiff and unnaturally still. Its hair was matted with what looked like dark, dried blood. It didn't move, didn't breathe. But somehow I knew it was aware of me. It was just waiting for me to come closer. I couldn't move, I couldn't breathe. My body refused to do anything but stand there frozen, staring at the figure. And then, in the most bone-chilling voice I'd ever heard, it spoke. "You're too late, John. It's already begun." I wanted to run. I wanted to turn around and get the hell out of there. But my legs wouldn't obey me. I was rooted to the spot, caught in that awful paralyzing fear that comes when you realize you've walked straight into something you can't escape. The figure didn't move, but I could feel it now. Something was moving, something crawling, twisting in the shadows behind it, and it was getting closer. "You shouldn't have come," the voice rasped, and I could hear the faint sound of something scraping along the floor. Something long, something sharp. The light flickered once, twice, and then went out, plunging the hallway into complete darkness. I could hear it now, scraping, scratching, something crawling toward me, its movements jerky, unnatural, like it didn't belong in this world, like it was trying to pull itself through from somewhere else. And then, just when I thought I was going to lose it, I felt the coldest breath on the back of my neck. "Run," the voice whispered. So close it was as if the thing was breathing right into my ear. And before I could process anything, my body finally obeyed. I turned on my heel and ran. I ran out of that building faster than I ever thought possible, my heart hammering, my breath coming in short gasps. The lot felt miles away, but I didn't dare look back. I didn't want to see what was chasing me. I made it back to the truck, leaping into the driver's seat and slamming the door shut behind me. I turned the key, praying the engine would start. And for once, luck was on my side. The truck roared to life and I threw it into gear, tearing out of that rest stop and onto the highway. I didn't stop looking in the rearview mirror until I was miles down the road. But even then, I knew it wasn't over, because something was still with me. I'm not sure what I thought would happen once I got back on the road. I wanted to think that once I left that place behind, it would all just be some twisted, bad dream. But I knew, deep down, that wasn't the case. This wasn't something that could just be shaken off like a nightmare. Something had followed me. I glanced nervously in the rearview mirror every few minutes, half expecting to see those same dark, flickering shadows creeping behind me on the road. The rest stop had been one thing. But what was still out there? That thing in the hallway, that whispering voice? It didn't just vanish, but the highway stretched on, flat and endless, the dark sky above a shroud of blackness. The only sounds were the hum of the engine, the tires rolling over the pavement, and the occasional pop from the CB radio. No voices, no shadows, just the silence. I wanted to believe I was out of danger. I needed to believe that. But then the radio crackled again. "John, I felt my blood run cold. It's not over, that was it." The voice wasn't coming from the CB like before. It wasn't a warning or a direct message this time. It was more like a faint whisper in the back of my mind, creeping in with the stillness of the night. It felt like it was coming from all around me, pressing in like the very air was haunted. I grabbed the mic, practically yanking it out of its holder. I didn't even care if I sounded crazy anymore. "Who is this?" My voice was rough, trembling, but I couldn't stop myself. "Who are you?" Nothing but static. I slammed my fist down on the dashboard, feeling the vibrations buzz through my fingertips. But then, as if the radio had been waiting for just the right moment, a voice came back. This time different, like it had grown stronger. More distinct. "You should have listened, John." My pulse raced. The same voice I'd heard before, except this time it wasn't just a warning. It was a threat, like the thing behind the voice knew something I didn't. I glanced around again. The road was still empty, nothing in the rearview mirror. The headlights barely pierced the heavy darkness around me. "Turn around, John, you're already too far gone." I had no idea what the hell it meant, but I couldn't ignore it anymore. My hands shook around the wheel, and a knot of dread twisted. Stay tight in my stomach. The rest stop, the shadows, the voice. It was all connected, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd walked right into something I couldn't get out of. I needed answers. I needed to know if this was real, or if I was just losing my damn mind. I pulled over onto the shoulder, the gravel crunching beneath my tires as I stopped the truck. I could barely see anything outside, just blackness stretching as far as the headlights could reach. I wasn't sure what I expected, but I had to try again. So I grabbed the mic and keyed it in, my voice trembling, barely above a whisper. "Who's there?" I asked, my heart hammering in my chest. "What do you want from me?" Static. Then, a reply. "We want you, John." I froze. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My mind spun, trying to process what the hell was happening. I didn't know if I should be scared, angry, or just plain confused, but I couldn't ignore it, not anymore. "Who are you?" I asked again. My voice was more urgent now, desperate. "What do you want with me?" Another long stretch of silence. Then, the voice returned, but this time it wasn't just one voice, it was a chorus. 1,000 whispers all overlapping, scratching at the edges of my sanity. "We're here, John, always waiting. You shouldn't have stopped. You shouldn't have come." I glanced nervously at the empty highway, the dark trees looming in the distance. I didn't feel alone anymore. The air felt heavier, thick with something, and then I saw it, a light, a flicker, deep in the woods off to the side of the road. I wasn't sure if it was the headlights reflecting off something, or if it was another vehicle. But there was something wrong about the way it glowed. It wasn't like any car's headlights, it was too bright, almost unnaturally so. I squinted into the distance, my eyes straining to see. The light blinked again and then it moved. It was coming closer. I didn't know what it was, but it wasn't another truck. It wasn't anything that made sense. The glow wasn't right. There was no vehicle, just the light, moving slowly and deliberately toward me. I slammed the truck into gear and revved the engine, panic gripping me like a vice. I didn't know where I was going or how to escape, but I wasn't going to sit there and wait for whatever it was to reach me. The truck roared down the road, the headlights slicing through the thickening darkness ahead. The light from the woods continued to draw closer, faster now, matching my speed. It was like it was chasing me. I pushed the truck harder, my foot pressing down on the gas, but no matter how fast I went, the light stayed right behind me. The static on the CB was louder now, filling the cab with a buzzing, crackling noise. "It's too late, John." The voice was distorted now, as though it was twisting, bending, changing. The light from the woods flickered once, and then I saw it. For the briefest second, the light parted, and I saw something else behind it. A figure silhouetted against the bright glow. It was tall, gaunt, with long arms that reached out like tendrils. And its face? I couldn't see its face. It was like the light had swallowed it, but I could feel it. I could feel its eyes on me, even if I couldn't see them. A shiver ran down my spine, and my foot slammed harder on the gas pedal. But the truck didn't seem to be going any faster. The light was closer now, right on my tail, and I could hear the whispers again, louder this time, filling the cab with words I couldn't understand. "Turn around." It wasn't just the radio anymore. It wasn't just the voice. It was all around me. And just as I glanced in the rearview mirror one last time, the light reached out, stretching forward like a hand. The world went black. I wasn't sure how long I'd been driving after everything went dark, after that blinding light in the rearview mirror and the static in the CB had swallowed me up. But by the time I woke up, the world had changed. The road stretched out in front of me, but it wasn't the road I'd been driving on before. There were no signs, no lights, no other cars. Just me, my truck, and the heavy, oppressive darkness that pressed down on everything. I looked out of the windshield, and my breath hitched. The headlights barely cut through the blackness, and the road ahead was rough, cracked and faded, almost like it hadn't been driven on in years. The lines that should have separated the lanes were nearly gone, just faint, pale streaks that seemed to disappear into the void. The air inside the cab was thick, and I could feel the pressure building, pressing on me from all sides. My throat went dry. Where the hell was I? I glanced around, but there was nothing. No landmarks, no streetlights, no signs of life. Just the endless black stretch of road ahead of me, and the unsettling feeling that I was driving through an empty world, like something had been erased. The truck's engine hummed steadily beneath me, but something felt off. The vibrations were different, too smooth, too quiet, as if something had taken the life out of the vehicle, leaving only the motion. I tried to reassure myself that it was just my mind playing tricks, that the dark had gotten to me. But I couldn't shake it. This wasn't right, this wasn't normal. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, a sharp prickle running down my spine. I tried to focus on the road, but the unease gnawed at me. That's when I saw it. Or more accurately, him. Far ahead in the distance, something was standing in the middle of the road. At first I thought it was a trick of the headlights, maybe a sign or some kind of debris. But as I got closer, I realized that wasn't the case. There was a man, standing in the center of the road, completely still. He didn't move an inch as I approached, just stood there, as though waiting for me. His outline was hard to make out at first, just a shadow against the fading light, as if he was part of the night itself. But as I drew nearer, the shape became more defined. He was wearing an old, heavy coat, one that looked far too worn and tattered for someone to still be wearing, and a cap that was pulled low over his face, obscuring most of it. But there was something wrong about him. I couldn't put my finger on it, but I knew I shouldn't stop. Every instinct told me to drive around him, to gun the engine and get the hell out of there. But I didn't. I couldn't. It was like the world had gone. Still, and my body refused to listen to my brain. I slowed down, trying to figure out what the hell was going on, my grip tightening on the steering wheel. The truck crawled toward him, the engine groaning under the weight of my unease. When I was about 50 feet from him, my headlights illuminated him completely. That's when I saw it. The man's face, or rather, what was missing from it. His eyes were gone. His face was pale, sickly pale, like the skin had been drained of color. The sockets where his eyes should have been were empty, just dark, hollow pits. His lips stretched in a thin, tight line, but even in the dim light, I could see the skin around his mouth was pulled taut in a grin that wasn't a smile. It was something wrong. A grin that made my skin crawl and my stomach turn. My heart skipped a beat. My foot stayed glued to the brake pedal, but I wasn't sure why. I knew I should have just kept going, should have driven past him as quickly as possible. But for some godforsaken reason, I found myself pulling the truck over, rolling the window down just enough to let the cold air rush in. "Hey," I called out, my voice unsteady. "What are you doing out here, buddy?" He didn't answer. He didn't even move. The truck's engine idled beneath me, a deep throbbing pulse in the silence. My nerves were shot. This wasn't normal. Something about this felt wrong on a level I couldn't even begin to understand. I should have called the cops, but what was I supposed to say? That I saw some guy standing on the road at the edge of nowhere with no reason to be there. "Hey, you need help?" I tried again, but my voice barely came out. It was weak, uncertain. Then slowly, too slowly, the figure turned his head to face me. I froze. It was like the world had gone still. His face, or what was left of it, tilted toward me in a grotesque parody of a movement. The grin stretched wider, the skin around his mouth pulling tighter, and a low, crackling sound filled the air. It sounded like dry paper being crumpled, like bones scraping against each other. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the sound that came next. "You shouldn't have stopped, John." I didn't even have time to react. The voice came from everywhere at once, like it was inside my head, a whisper that crawled into my ears and wrapped itself around my brain. I felt it settle there, cold and suffocating. My pulse raced, my mouth went dry. "You've come too far now," the voice rasped, a low, menacing tone that sent ice through my veins. I blinked, my breath coming in shallow gasps. Who are you?" I demanded, trying to sound braver than I felt. But my words came out like a whisper. The figure didn't answer. Instead, he raised a hand, and his fingers twitched, long and skeletal. They looked wrong, bent at odd angles, like they weren't used to being moved. The man lifted his hand and pointed directly at me, and I felt my heart lurch. "You'll never leave this road," I wanted to scream, to slam the truck into reverse and drive away, but I couldn't move. My whole body felt paralyzed, trapped, in place by some unseen force. It wasn't just fear, it was something deeper, something ancient, something that had been here long before I ever drove this route. And then, as if sensing my growing panic, the figure started to shuffle toward the truck. I snapped out of my stupor, adrenaline flooding my veins. I slammed the truck into reverse, the engine roaring to life as I floored the gas pedal. The tires screeched in protest, but I didn't care. I had to get out of there. But the man didn't move from the road. He didn't flinch or even take a step back. He just stood there, smiling, his twisted grin, his hollow eyes locked on me as the truck surged backward. I glanced over my shoulder. The road behind me was a blur of dark nothingness, stretching into oblivion. I couldn't hear the truck, couldn't feel the vibrations. It was like the world around me had gone completely silent, as though everything had stopped, except for the pulse of my own terrified heartbeat. And then, just as I thought I might make it, just as I thought I was going to escape, something else happened. The figure reached out, slowly, deliberately, and the truck stopped. I didn't hit the brakes. I didn't make a mistake. It was like the very road itself had pulled me back. I slammed my hand against the wheel, but nothing happened. The truck didn't budge. I looked up at the figure, my eyes wide with horror. His grin stretched wider, and I could feel the cold, terrible presence of something ancient, something that had been waiting for me, for all of us, for so much longer than I had ever known. He wasn't just standing in front of me. He was waiting for me to understand that I wasn't on a road at all. I was on a trap from which there was no escape. I could feel the cold sweat trickling down my back, soaking into the fabric of my shirt. My hands were shaking so badly that I could barely keep a grip on the wheel, but no matter how hard I tried to force my foot to the gas pedal, the truck wouldn't move. I turned the key again, praying that the engine would roar back to life, but the truck didn't budge. Not even an inch. The figure in front of me, he wasn't a person, he couldn't be. He stood there, unmoving, his eyes, those hollow, empty sockets, staring through me like they were digging into the very core of my soul. The grin on his face was now a sickeningly wide, grotesque stretch of skin, like something not meant to exist. I slammed my foot on the brake again, but it didn't change a thing. My foot pressed down harder, almost to the floor, but the truck stayed in place, like it had roots, like it was stuck here, in this place, in this God-forsaken stretch of empty road. The figure started to move again, but not the way I expected. He didn't shuffle or walk. It was like the road bent around him, like the universe was shifting to make way for him. His feet never left the ground, but somehow he was moving, coming closer, getting nearer. "You shouldn't have stopped," the voice whispered, cutting through the cold air of the cab. "But you did." I wanted to scream. I wanted to break out of this loop, this nightmare, and drive away, but my hands were frozen to the wheel. Every part of me was screaming to get out of here, but it felt like the world itself was pressing down on me, trapping me here in this moment, this endless, suffocating moment. "Who are you?" I croaked, my voice barely above a whisper. My throat was dry as sandpaper, the words catching in my mouth. But it didn't matter, because the figure just smiled again. The grin stretched impossibly wide. His mouth was too big for a human being, and his lips seemed to split at the corners, pulling back in a horrific show of teeth. Sharp, uneven, yellowed. "I am the one who watches," the voice echoed, seeming to come from every direction at once. It wasn't just in my head now. It surrounded me, pressing down on me like a blanket, suffocating me with its cold weight. I am the one who waits. The road stretched ahead of me, dark and endless, and I knew deep in my bones that I wasn't going anywhere. Not anymore. I wasn't even sure how long I'd been stuck in this twisted loop. Minutes, hours, days. Time didn't make sense anymore. It was like the road had swallowed up all sense of it, leaving me with nothing but the oppressive darkness. And that damn figure who wouldn't leave me alone. I tried again to start the engine. Nothing. The truck remained still. Desperation clawed at my insides. Why can't I move? Why can't I leave this place? And then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. A shadow, a flicker, a movement in the distance. At first, I thought it was just my mind playing tricks on me. But no. There it was again. Another figure. Another man standing in the middle of the road just like the first, and then another and another. I blinked, rubbing my eyes to clear the blur. But when I looked again, there were dozens, hundreds, of figures lining the road ahead, their shapes distorted by the flickering headlights. They stood in perfect, unnerving silence, just like the first one. Their eyes were hollow, empty, but their grins, those goddamn grins, they stretched further and further, wider and wider, like the universe itself was being ripped apart by the force of their smiles. Each one of them was wearing the same ragged old clothes, coats that looked like they belonged to men who had been dead for years, the same caps pulled low over their faces, the same twisted, empty expressions that sent shivers up my spine. My pulse thundered in my ears. I could hear my breath coming in short, ragged gasps, but I couldn't seem to make my body move. I tried again to start the truck. I twisted the key, pushed the gas pedal to the floor, but nothing. The engine sputtered and died, the silence of the road pressing in, crushing me. The figures kept coming closer, their footsteps in perfect sync, shuffling forward, never saying a word. The air in the cab grew colder, thicker. The temperature dropped until I could see my breath fogging up in front of me. One of them stepped forward, closer. I saw the ragged coat, the twisted grin, and those awful, hollow eyes. The figure raised a hand and pointed directly at me, its finger like a bone poking out from under the sleeve. "You shouldn't have stopped," the voice said again, but this time it wasn't just in my head. It was coming from every one of the figures, all of them. They all whispered it in unison, their voices blending together into one cold, deathly chorus. "You're one of us now, John." I couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't breathe. It was as if the words themselves were pressing in on me, choking me from the inside. I felt my heart racing, my skin going clammy with cold sweat. The figure in front of me reached for the door handle. My body jerked into action without thinking. I reached for the door as well, locking it just as the figure's hand made contact with the handle. The lock clicked into place with a soft, final sound. The figure's fingers curled around the handle. Anyway, and for a brief moment, I thought it might tear the door off its hinges. But then the figure stopped. The hand left the handle, and the figure stepped back. "Not yet," it whispered. I don't know how long I sat there, trembling, locked in a cold sweat, watching them all stand motionless on the side of the road, watching the figures crowd around me, waiting, as if they had all the time in the world. And then, as suddenly as it started, the pressure lifted. The figures disappeared, vanishing into thin air as if they'd never been there at all. The road in front of me was once again empty, the darkness stretching out without end. The truck still wouldn't start. The engine was dead. But the silence, that had felt suffocating moments ago, felt like a small, fragile gift now. It wasn't much, but it was the first quiet I'd had since I'd stepped into this nightmare. I looked around, trying to get my bearings. My head was spinning. My body was trembling uncontrollably. The world outside the truck felt wrong, like it wasn't real. The same dead silence pressed in, the same thick, choking dark. I could still hear their voices, those terrible whispers in my ears. "You can never leave." I didn't know if it was just in my mind anymore, but I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't ever going to be able to drive off this road. Not now. Not ever. I was stuck. Trapped. And the more I resisted, the more I struggled, the more the road seemed to laugh, because it was the road that controlled everything, not me. And as I sat there in the dead quiet of my truck, surrounded by the endless, oppressive darkness, I knew that nothing could save me from it. From them, I was a part of. The road now, and there was no way out. The truck's engine was still dead, and the world outside the cab felt like it was pressing in on me from all sides. The air had grown thick, the silence deafening. I couldn't move, couldn't think. The weight of it all was too much. My mind was spiraling into a kind of numbness, as if I were floating somewhere between sleep and wakefulness, between life and something darker. I leaned back in the driver's seat, my eyes darting between the dead road and the flickering lights of the dashboard. The eerie quiet settled deeper around me, and I was so damn tired. I just wanted to close my eyes, to let go of this nightmare, to find some kind of escape. But every time I thought I might doze off, I saw them. Those figures, the ones with the hollow eyes and the endless grins. They weren't gone, not really. No matter how far I pushed them out of my mind, I could still see their twisted faces behind. My eyelids hear their cold mocking voices in my skull. "You're one of us now, John." I wasn't sure how long I'd been sitting there, but I was starting to feel the weight of the stillness press harder, like the whole world had stopped spinning. Like I was being held in place, waiting for something, someone, to come and finish this torment. And then, out of nowhere, the radio crackled. I jumped in my seat, my breath catching in my throat. The sound of static filled the cab, but this time it wasn't the normal crackling I was used to. It was different, faster, sharper, almost like someone was trying to get through to me. I grabbed the CB mic, my hand trembling. My eyes flicked to the dark road outside. It was as if I could feel something waiting just beyond the horizon, something that wanted me to stay, to listen. "Breaker, breaker," I said, my voice sounding weak, like it didn't even belong to me. "Anyone out there? This is 79. I need help, damn it." The static sputtered again, louder this time, before the voice came through. But it wasn't a normal voice. It was wrong, twisted, as if the person on the other end had been speaking from the depths of hell itself. John, you can't leave." The voice was heavy, dripping with a kind of malevolent satisfaction, a coldness that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand straight up. My blood ran cold. I swallowed hard, the fear crawling up my throat, choking me. "Who is this?" The voice laughed, a slow, bone-chilling laugh that echoed through the speakers, reverberating inside my skull. "You should know who it is, John." I clenched my jaw, trying to hold it together, but my hands were shaking so bad I could hardly keep the mic in my grip. What the hell was going on? "You're one of us now," the voice repeated, its tone growing darker with each word. "We've been waiting for you. You thought you could leave. You thought you could drive away. You're already part of this road, John. This is your final stop. And now you're ours." I tried to slam the mic back onto the dashboard, but my hand wouldn't obey. It felt as if someone was holding me in place, keeping me from moving. I couldn't break free from the grip of the voice that crawled deeper into my brain, burrowing itself into the marrow of my bones. The truck's headlights flickered, the harsh white light flickering in the rearview mirror. I glanced up quickly, my pulse skyrocketing. Out of the darkness I saw them, figures, more of them, standing at the edge of the road. There were dozens, maybe hundreds, all staring at me with those blank, hollow eyes and that twisted, permanent grin. One by one they began to move, slowly, deliberately, as though this moment had been planned for years, centuries even. They walked toward me, their footsteps synchronized, their heads slowly tilting as if they were watching me with an intense, unnatural interest. I tried to start the truck again, but the engine was still dead. The damn thing wouldn't move. It was as if the truck had become one with the road itself, and I couldn't separate the two. I was stuck, frozen. "You'll never leave this road," the voice echoed again. But this time, it wasn't just the CB. It was in the air around me. It was inside my skull. The figures kept moving closer and closer until they were standing in front of my truck. There was nowhere left to go, nowhere to hide. I wanted to scream, to break down, to beg for mercy, but I couldn't. Something inside me told me that even if I did, it wouldn't matter. There was no salvation, no help. They were here. The road had claimed me, and now they were here to take me for good. A figure moved forward from the crowd. It was the same one I had seen before, the man with the hollow eyes, the one who had smiled at me, the one who had pointed, who had whispered that I shouldn't have stopped. He was standing right in front of my truck now, just inches from the hood. I could see him clearly, as though his presence was burning through the darkness. His coat was tattered and old. His hands, long skeletal fingers, reached out toward the truck. He grinned that sickening grin, and this time I saw something in his eyes. It wasn't just emptiness anymore, it was hunger. "You were never meant to make it out of here, John," he said, his voice soft but filled with a malevolent glee. "This is your end. This is where it all stops." I closed my eyes, a tear slipping down my cheek as I clutched the steering wheel. The weight of my fear crushed me, but it wasn't just fear anymore, it was something worse. Something that understood the horror of what was happening to me. The man's voice crackled again through the air. "Welcome to the road, John. You'll never leave." And then, just like that, the truck's engine roared to life. The headlights blazed to full brightness, and I felt the truck shift beneath me as if it had suddenly come back to life. But the road was gone. The figures, the twisted, hollow-eyed faces, they were all gone. I wasn't sure what was happening anymore. All I knew was that I was no longer on the road. I was somewhere else, somewhere far darker. The voice was still in my head. The road was still in my blood. And I realized, too late, that the truck had already become part of me, just as the road had become part of them. It wasn't just my final stop, it was theirs too, and they were never going to let me go. You ever been driving down a long, empty stretch of highway in the dead of night, with nothing but the soft hum of the engine and the endless ribbon of road ahead of you? That's the kind of drive I had ahead of me. The kind of drive that feels like you're the only person left in the world. I'd just finished a long haul from Boise and was heading south, heading down to Salt Lake City. The freight was light, the truck was running smooth, and the night was unusually quiet. Perfect. For getting a few hours of road under me. You know the kind of night I mean. The kind that makes you feel like you can just drive, and time blurs together, like the road is endless. I was driving alone, of course. That's the life of a trucker. You get used to the solitude after a while. You've got your thoughts, the truck's engine as your constant companion, and your radio to fill the silence when you need it. I hadn't really noticed it at first. The stillness. It was just another night on the road. The truck's headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the endless black asphalt and the occasional flicker of tree lines on either side of me. The only sound was the steady hum of the engine and the tires against the road, but then there was a sound, a faint noise, like a soft whimper, barely audible over the engine. I thought it was just my mind playing tricks on me at first. Maybe the wind, maybe the road. Hell, maybe the truck was making a strange noise, but it came again, this time louder, a soft, high-pitched cry, almost like a baby. I felt a chill crawl up my spine, and for a moment I wasn't sure if I was hearing things or if something was really out there. The cry was so faint, so distant, but it had that raw desperation in it. It sounded real, but it made no sense. There shouldn't be a baby out here, not on this stretch of road, not in the middle of nowhere. The nearest town was miles away, and there was no one else around. I glanced at the rear-view mirror just to make sure I wasn't imagining things. The road behind me was empty, no lights, no vehicles, just the endless stretch of dark highway. My grip tightened on the wheel as I continued driving, trying to push the thought out of my mind. The road was empty. I was alone. Nothing was there. But then the crying came again, louder this time. I slammed the brakes, the truck lurching forward as I pulled over onto the shoulder of the road. The tires screeched on the asphalt and I cursed under my breath. What the hell was going on? I flicked the headlights off, my heart racing in my chest as the sound of the crying seemed to grow even louder. The noise was coming from the back of the truck. There was no doubt about it. I opened the door and a blast of cold air hit me like a slap in the face. It was a bone-chilling night, and the silence that surrounded me was unnerving. The air felt thick, heavy, like the world was holding its breath. I pulled my coat tighter around me and stepped out onto the road. The truck's engine ticked in. The distance and the air felt wrong. There was an odd stillness, a tension in the atmosphere that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I turned, and the sound of the crying stopped. Suddenly the night was eerily quiet again, like the world had exhaled all at once. I made my way around to the back of the truck, looking over my shoulder to make sure there was no one following me. The darkness felt suffocating, as though it was closing in on me from all sides. Every step I took toward the trailer felt like I was walking into something unknown, something wrong. The hair on my arms prickled. When I reached the back of the trailer, I hesitated for a second. There was nothing visible, no sign of movement. I could hear nothing but the faint rustling of leaves in the wind. I looked over at the cargo, half expecting to see something or someone hiding in there, but there was nothing. I pulled open the doors. The sound of the hinges creaking in the cold air sent a shiver down my spine. The trailer was empty, just my usual cargo. Nothing. Not even a trace of anyone or anything that could be causing the sound. I stood there for a moment, taking in the emptiness. The silence now felt oppressive. The crying had stopped, but the eerie feeling in the pit of my stomach hadn't gone anywhere. I looked around, scanning the dark highway, as if expecting to see something, someone, emerge from the shadows. But the road was still deserted. Nothing but darkness. I closed the doors with a loud bang, trying to shake the feeling that something was off. I was probably just tired. Maybe the cold air was messing with my head. I climbed back into the truck and started it up again. The engine rumbled to life, and I pulled back onto the highway, my hands tight on the wheel. I tried to convince myself that it was just the wind or my imagination. It had to be. There was no other explanation. But as I drove on, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was following me. I kept glancing at the rearview mirror, half expecting to see something move in the darkness. But the road behind me remained empty. The darkness was a void, swallowing everything in its path, but the longer I drove, the more certain I became. Something was out there watching me. Something was waiting for me to make a mistake. And whatever it wasn't done with me yet. The cry came again. This time it wasn't distant. It was right behind me. A sharp, desperate wail. A baby's cry so real and so full of sorrow it made my blood run cold. I glanced in the mirror once more, my heart pounding in my chest. Still nothing. I floored the accelerator, trying to outrun the sound, but it stayed. With me, growing louder, coming from somewhere behind the truck. I couldn't escape it. And I didn't know why. The road stretched endlessly ahead, but every mile felt like I was sinking deeper into a nightmare I couldn't escape. The truck's engine roared louder, almost drowning out the sound of the crying. But there it was, growing sharper, more desperate, clawing at my senses. It was like the very air around me was vibrating with its frequency. I pressed harder on the accelerator, trying to shake the feeling that I was being pursued by something unseen. My hands gripped the wheel so tightly that my knuckles were white, but no matter how fast I went, the crying was right there. It wasn't in the truck anymore, not in the trailer. It was in the air. A low, mournful wail that seemed to echo through the cab. Each time I tried to tell myself it was just my mind playing tricks on me, the cry grew louder, more urgent. It felt like it was in my bones. I flicked the CB radio on, desperate for anything, any sound, any voice that could break the silence. Breaker 19, anyone out there? I called into the static. There was nothing at first, just silence, but then a crackling voice answered back. Faint but clear. Go ahead. 10 to 4. I almost jumped out of my seat. I hadn't expected anyone to be out here. But I took a deep breath. Hand spoke again, trying to keep my voice steady. Hey, this is Ray out on Route 74. Just wanted to check in, see if anyone's around. It's a real weird night. I got a crying sound, coming from somewhere. Anybody know anything about it? There was a long pause, then the voice crackled back. Crying? You sure ain't no babies out here, man. You're all alone out there. Best just to keep your foot on the gas, Ray. You don't want to stop out. Here? My heart skipped a beat. Something in the voice sounded off. Like the guy was trying to warn me but wasn't sure how to say it. 10-4, I replied, my voice trembling despite myself. I ended the transmission and pulled the CB off, the dashboard, tossing it back onto the passenger seat. I didn't want to hear anymore, not if it didn't make sense. Not if it wasn't helping. And then it happened. The truck jerked. I wasn't sure if it was the road, the tires, or something else, but the entire rig bucked like a horse. The engine sputtered, and the lights flickered in and out. I slammed my foot down on the brake, but it didn't seem to help. The crying was louder now, closer. The sound, that high-pitched, pained wail, started to sound almost familiar. I realized it was no longer just a cry. It was calling me, the baby or whatever. Seemed to be beckoning me. I couldn't explain it, but there was a pull, a strange magnetism in the cry, like it had taken hold of my very thoughts. It was as if it was reaching deep into my mind, demanding that I follow it, that I find it. The headlights flickered, and I saw something in the distance, a shadow, but it wasn't just any shadow. It was larger, moving, stretching across the road like it had a mind of its own. It seemed to be following me. No, leading me, drawing me closer. I gritted my teeth and slammed my foot back on the gas, accelerating hard. The rig growled under. The strain and the shadows shrank back, but they didn't disappear. They swirled around me like dark smoke closing in on the truck, surrounding me. The cry was now relentless, piercing through the night. I kept my eyes focused straight ahead, knowing that whatever I was dealing with, it wasn't just some hallucination. Something was wrong, something ancient and unexplainable. And I wasn't going to make it through the night if I didn't figure it out. The truck bounced wildly over the road, tires screeching as I tried to navigate through the fog-like shadows that swirled across my windshield. I was going fast, too fast, but it felt like I wasn't getting anywhere. The darkness seemed to be thickening around me, pressing in on all sides. The cry continued, louder now, as if it was coming from inside the truck itself. I could almost hear it in my mind, its desperation unmistakable. There was something wrong about the sound, like it wasn't quite human, but at the same time it was the sound of pure helplessness. I dared a glance in the side mirror. The shadow was still there, stretching out, getting larger, moving faster now. It was no longer just a shape, but a mass, a living thing pulsing with energy like it was breathing. I had to stop, but I didn't. I pressed harder on the gas pedal. The truck groaned in protest, but the shadow followed, always just behind me, closing the distance. Then, just as quickly as it had appeared, the shadow seemed to dissolve. The cry stopped abruptly. The air fell into an unnerving silence. I pulled the rig off the road, my heart hammering in my chest. The headlights cut through the darkness, but there was no sign of movement now. No shadow, no baby's cry. Just the empty road ahead. What the hell was going on? What had I just driven through? My mind raced, trying to make sense of it. I was alone, no other truckers, no vehicles, just me. I got out of the truck, the cold night air rushing into my lungs. I walked around to the back, half expecting to find anything out of place. The trailer doors were still locked, nothing unusual. No babies, no voices. But the air felt thick, heavy, and the darkness beyond the truck felt wrong. It was like it was waiting for something. I reached for the door, ready to climb back in when I heard it. A whisper. Not from the road or the wind, but from inside. "The cab, come closer." I froze, my hand still on the door handle. It was so soft, like a voice in the back of my head. I spun around. There was nothing. Not even a car, not even a truck. Just the endless stretch of dark highway with no sign of life. But there was something out there. Something watching me. I felt. And then from the shadows behind me I heard the voice again. This time louder. "You can't leave," and my blood ran cold. I froze, my fingers still gripping the door handle as the voice echoed around me, swirling through the air like it was alive. The words didn't just come from the air, they felt like they were coming from the ground beneath my feet, from the trees in the distance, from the very atmosphere around me. "You can't leave." My breath caught in my throat. I whipped around, my eyes searching the darkness, but there was nothing. The highway stretched endlessly in both directions, a ribbon of black that seemed to go on forever. No cars, no lights, just me and the damn shadows. I had to get back in the truck. I had to leave. My legs felt like they were made of lead, unwilling to move, but finally I forced myself to turn back toward the driver's side. The hairs on my neck stood up, like something was watching me, waiting. But when I reached the door, something stopped. The door handle was warm. I froze, my pulse spiking. I hadn't been gone that long. The truck wasn't sitting in direct sunlight, and it hadn't been on for more than a few minutes. Yet the handle felt hot, as though it had been touched by someone, just before I reached for it. I looked down at the handle, then slowly let my eyes drift up toward the side mirror. And there it was, right in the reflection. Just Behind me, a figure. I whipped around, my heart racing, but there was nothing. Nothing at all. Just the dark road stretching into oblivion. It was the worst feeling I'd ever had, like I was being hunted by something invisible, something that I couldn't even see. My breath quickened as I opened the truck door and climbed in. I slammed it shut behind me, locking the door with a violent click. For a moment, everything was still, but the crying started again, louder, more frantic. I stared out the windshield, my eyes scanning the empty highway ahead, my hands gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles went white. The cry wasn't coming from the back of the truck anymore. It was all around me, inside the cab, inside my mind. I turned on the radio just to drown out the sound. The static hissed in response, the airwaves alive with that horrible, endless buzzing. But nothing could silence it. The cry tore through the silence like a knife. The voice on the radio flickered to life, cutting through the static with a crackle. You have to stop. I nearly jumped out of my seat. I slammed the radio off, my chest tight. That voice, it wasn't a trucker, not like before. It wasn't even human. I tried to keep my composure, tried to focus on the road ahead, but the shadows were moving again, flickers of movement just beyond my peripheral vision. They were there like dark, shifting blobs, just out of reach. The cry, once a soft whimper, had grown sharper, more insistent, almost like it was calling my name. Ray. The wind picked up, rattling the truck. I had to make it to my destination. I had to keep going. But what if this wasn't just a bad dream? What if I wasn't going to make it out of here at all? I pressed my foot harder on the gas, but it didn't feel like the truck was moving faster. It felt like the road itself was slowing down, like I was sinking deeper into something I couldn't escape. And then I saw it, a flicker of light in the distance. At first I thought it was another truck, or maybe a town up ahead. But the closer I got, the more I realized something was wrong. It wasn't just light. It was wrong. The light flickered and twisted, as though it were alive. An unnatural glow that bled into the sky like oil staining water. The closer I got, the more it seemed to draw me in, like it was reaching for me, trying to pull me toward it. "Stop the truck, Ray." The voice was back, low, seductive, almost like a whisper in my ear. I slammed my foot on the brake. The truck screeched to a halt, the tires grinding against the asphalt, sending a wave of dust and gravel up into the air. The light in the distance grew brighter. It seemed to pulse, like a heartbeat. That's when I saw it. The silhouette. A figure, standing in the center of the road, bathed in that strange, sickly light. I couldn't make out its face, but it was there, just standing, unmoving. The figure was tall, thin, like it was stretching upward into the sky. Its hands, no, they weren't hands. They were claws. Long, twisted fingers that reached out toward me, beckoning. The crying started again, louder, closer, as if the baby's cry was coming from within the figure itself. "Come closer," the voice urged. My body was frozen. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. But somehow I could feel the pull, the same pull I had felt earlier, the one that made me step out of the truck, the one that made me come closer, to get closer to whatever this thing was. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the figure vanished into the darkness, leaving behind only the wail of the crying baby and the unsettling glow that still lingered in the distance. I don't know how long I sat there, my breath coming in shallow gasps, my hands trembling on the steering wheel. But after a long, agonizing moment, I finally slammed my foot back on the gas pedal. I didn't want to be here. I didn't want to go any further. But something inside me, something dark, something ancient, was forcing me to keep going. The truck's engine sputtered, the wheels grinding on the cracked, broken asphalt. My grip on the wheel tightened as my eyes scanned the horizon, trying to find something familiar. But there was nothing. Just an endless stretch of highway leading into a thickening fog that swallowed everything in its path. My breath came in shallow gasps, the air heavy with the scent of rot and decay, like the road itself was a living, breathing thing. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone anymore. The truck felt too quiet, too empty, like I was driving through a forgotten world. The weight of it pressed on me, suffocating me in a way that was both physical and psychological. The baby's cries had stopped for the moment, but I knew they weren't gone. They were lurking in the back of my mind, echoing in the dark corners of my thoughts, a constant reminder of the nightmare I was trapped in. The fog was thickening, crawling over the truck, coating the windows with a damp chill that made my skin prickle. I couldn't see more than a few feet in front of me, the headlights barely cutting through the suffocating mist. And then I saw it. A figure standing at the side of the road, partially obscured by the fog. It was small, almost childlike. A woman. A child? I couldn't make out the details, just the silhouette. But there was something about her, something that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. My heart skipped a beat. I slowed the truck, instincts screaming at me to stop. The figure didn't move, just stood there, waiting. Something deep inside told me that I shouldn't get too close, that I should keep driving. But my hands were already pulling the wheel to the side. The truck jerked to a halt as I pulled off the road. The engine clicked off, leaving an eerie silence that seemed to stretch for miles. The fog pressed in, making everything around me indistinct and unnerving. I hesitated for a moment. Was this a trap? I didn't want to get out, didn't want to approach, but the voice in my head, soft and insistent, pushed me forward. She's waiting for you. I opened the door, the heavy air hitting me like a slap. My boots hit the ground with a dull thud, the soft, wet dirt squishing beneath my feet. I couldn't even see the truck anymore, swallowed by the fog as soon as I stepped away. There was no sound, no wind, no crickets, no rustling leaves, just the hollow beat of my heart as I approached. The figure. Her back was to me, her silhouette barely visible in the mist, and as I drew closer I could hear the faintest whisper, almost imperceptible, like a soft melody coming from the darkness. Then, the figure turned. It wasn't a woman. It wasn't a child. It was something else entirely. Her face, no, its face was pale, almost translucent, like a mask of flesh stretched too thin. Her eyes were hollow black pits, devoid of any life. The lips were cracked like dried paper, and her hands, long and spindly, trembled at her sides. The air around her felt colder, colder than anything I'd ever felt before, a cold that reached down to my very bones. I froze. My mouth went dry, and for the first time in my life I couldn't breathe. The fog seemed to curl around me, pulling me closer to her, like it had a mind of its own. "You've come to the end, Ray." Her voice was low, like gravel scraping across stone, and yet it felt like it was inside my head, inside my soul. I wanted to turn and run, but my legs wouldn't obey. I was paralyzed, stuck in place as the figure took a step toward me, its empty eyes boring into mine. "The road ends here. You don't belong in this world anymore." Something twisted in my gut. I couldn't look away from those eyes, those dark, hollow pits. The air was thick with the scent of death, but not the kind you could smell with your nose, the kind you felt deep in your chest, the kind that made every instinct scream, "This is wrong." Her hands rose slowly, fingers extending, like claws. The fog parted slightly around her, revealing the faintest outline of a road stretching out in front of us. A road that shouldn't have existed, a road that was too straight, too perfect. It led nowhere. And I knew, deep down, that if I walked down it, I would never come back. The baby's cry echoed in the distance again, louder this time, almost frantic, like it was begging me to do something, to move, to leave. But I was frozen, trapped in the nightmare that was wrapping around me like chains. Her voice slithered into my mind again. "You're not the first, Ray. You're not the first to make the mistake of driving this road." I wanted to scream, to fight to get out of there, but it was too late. I was already gone. The fog shifted again, and suddenly I wasn't alone. Figures appeared out of the mist, shapes that shouldn't have been, beings that twisted and contorted as though they were never meant to be in this world. They moved in and out of the fog, their glowing eyes watching me, their mouths opening in silent screams. And then I saw it, the thing that had been waiting for me. It was a shape, a mass of shadows, almost human but distorted in ways that couldn't be explained. It towered above me, its body made of dark, swirling smoke that churned and writhed like a storm. The air around it buzzed with an unnatural energy. Its eyes were pits of darkness, two voids that seemed to suck the very light from the world. You came here, you chose this road, and now you belong to it. The figure's voice was like 1,000 whispers, all layered on top of each other, vibrating through the very air I breathed. I knew what it meant. I had known it from the moment I saw the figure. I was no longer in control. I had been claimed. This wasn't a road, it wasn't a destination. It was a trap, and I had fallen into it. The baby's cries grew louder now, sharper, closer, so close that it was almost unbearable. My eyes darted around, searching for the source, but it was everywhere, all around me, filling my ears, drowning out everything else. You were never meant to deliver the package, Ray. You were meant to be here, with us. The ground beneath. My feet began to tremble, and I realized it wasn't solid. It was shifting like a living thing, opening up beneath me, threatening to swallow me whole. The shadows grew longer, reaching toward me, their tendrils curling, trying to pull me into the abyss. I tried to move, but my body wouldn't respond. The road was crumbling, falling apart around me. The figures from the fog were closing in, and I could feel their cold, clammy hands touching my skin, pulling at my clothes, dragging me deeper into the dark. And then, with one final scream, the baby's cry pierced through the chaos, and I felt myself falling, down into the void. The world went black. The wheels of the truck ground against the asphalt, sending vibrations through my entire body. The destination ahead, the town that had appeared out of nowhere, seemed to grow closer with every turn. The streets were empty, silent, like no one had ever set foot there before, yet there was something eerily familiar about it all. I turned onto the first street I could find, the headlights casting long shadows along the cracked, desolate buildings. The air smelled foul, like mildew mixed with something more metallic, something ancient. It clung to my skin and to my lungs, burning with every breath I took. The baby's cry had grown quieter, but it still gnawed at me, lingering in the back of my mind like a splinter. I tried to ignore it, tried to focus on the road, but the closer I got to the heart of the town, the more my surroundings seemed to distort. The streets no longer seemed to lead anywhere, just in endless loops, twisting and turning in impossible angles, defying any logic. I gripped the wheel tighter, my knuckles white, but I couldn't stop now. I had come this far. The road had brought me here, whether I liked it or not, and somewhere deep inside I knew that thing was still behind me, still waiting to catch up. As I passed a row of buildings, the flickering lights overhead illuminated the darkened windows. I saw figures in the glass, or rather the reflections of them. They were watching me. I could feel their eyes boring into me, but I dared not look. The urge to keep driving, to push through this nightmare, was overwhelming. Yet something was pulling at me, urging me to stop. "Stop, Ray." It was the voice again, soft, almost coaxing. I slammed my foot on the brake. The truck lurched to a halt, the tires screeching as I fought to keep control. The headlights illuminated something just ahead, a figure standing in the middle of the street. Not a man, not a person. It was more like a shadow, stretching unnaturally, flickering in and out of existence. Its outline was shifting, changing like it was being warped by some unseen force. It was tall, too tall, and thin, its limbs elongated, the fingers twisted into sharp points. Its face was obscured by darkness, but the red glow of its eyes pierced through the blackness like twin lanterns. It opened its mouth, but there was no sound, only the deep, guttural vibrations that hummed in my chest. I had no choice. I had to keep going. I had to move. But the shadow didn't step aside. Instead, it raised one of its long, gnarled arms, pointing directly at me. "You shouldn't have come here." The voice wasn't human. It was ancient, deep, and cruel, like 1,000 voices layered over each other, speaking in unison. I felt the weight of it press down on me, suffocating me with every passing second. I wasn't going to make it. I slammed the truck into reverse and spun the wheel, kicking up gravel as I tried to turn around. But the shadow, the thing, was faster than I could react. It darted in front of me, its limbs stretching, twisting, impossibly fast. In a split second, I slammed the gas pedal and tried to steer around it. But I was too late. Its hand shot out, slamming against the front of the truck with an earth-shattering thud. The truck buckled under the impact, the front end crushing like a tin can. The engine roared in protest as I fought to keep control. "You should have listened." The voice reverberated through the truck, rattling the very bones in my body. I spun the wheel, but nothing worked. I could feel the truck being pulled, dragged towards something I couldn't see. And then I realized I wasn't alone in the cab anymore. A chill ran down my spine as I felt a presence beside me, its cold fingers brushing against my skin. I glanced over, and there it was. The thing. It was in the seat next to me now. It smiled, its mouth stretched wide, its teeth black and jagged, like something from a nightmare, something that should never have existed. Its breath was hot and foul, like decay itself. "You didn't think you'd escape, did you, Ray?" I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. I couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't even breathe. The air had turned thick, suffocating me with the weight of it all. I fought to grab the wheel again, my fingers trembling as I struggled to control the truck. But it wasn't working. The road was slipping away beneath me, warping, pulling me, deeper into whatever hell I had driven into. "You're too far gone," the creature whispered, its voice low and gloating. "And there's nowhere to run." I slammed my eyes shut, but even in the dark I could still feel it. It was everywhere. The very air felt alive, swirling around me like a storm. The sound of the baby's cry returned, louder, desperate, echoing, inside my skull. And then, just like that, I realized something. The cry wasn't from the baby anymore. It was me. I opened my eyes, and everything shifted. The darkness that had enveloped me was gone. The truck wasn't moving. The sound of the crying faded away. For a moment everything was still. But I knew the truth. I wasn't driving anymore. I was stuck. Stuck in the very thing I had feared, trapped in the endless loop of this twisted, hellish nightmare. And then I saw it. The town, the roads, the endless stretch of highway. It was all the same dark stretch, the same twisted nightmare that had swallowed me whole. It was no longer a destination. It was a cage. I wasn't just being hunted anymore. I was the prey. And as the shadows closed in, I realized the truth. There was no escape. There would never be escape.